Hello and welcome back to For All Humans. Today we'll be talking about racism and slavery, but first we need to start our discussion by defining what it means to be human. Being human is significant as there is a fundamental difference between human beings and animals, and that is in self-reflection. We are the only species on Earth that have the ability to think of our impermanence, our self-worth, and our purpose. We have the ability to contemplate the past and ponder the future, and to actively repress our impulses. Animals can be taught almost anything on a primitive level, but as they say, no chimp can self-reflect. That is to say, it is unable to step outside of itself to see itself from an alternate perspective, or to realize consciously that it is alive, that its heart is beating, that it is walking the planet, that it will die someday, and that the moon is overhead. Islam goes deeper in its distinction between man and animal. The Quran states there are several ways humans are favored above other species, through their creation, their intellect, and their custodianship. Let's examine these in greater detail. The Quran enhances the dignity bestowed upon humans by telling us how we were created. There are two elements mentioned in our conception. One is of the physical, that is dust or clay from earth, and the other is spiritual, that is the divine spirit of God. The physical aspect of us is humbling, what with being out of clay and all, but having the spirit of God in each and every human raises us all in status. As the Quran narrates in chapter 22, verse 5, O people, if you should be in doubt about the resurrection, then consider that indeed we created you from dust, then from a sperm drop, then from a clinging clot, and then from a lump of flesh, formed and unformed, that we may show you. And we settle in the wombs whom we will for a specified term, then we bring you out as a child, and then we develop you that you may reach your maturity. And in chapter 15, verse 29 it says, And I have proportioned him, Adam, and breathed into him of my soul. Being created by the divine spirit of God elevates one's status, and this favor was not bestowed upon any other creature on earth. The word human itself is mentioned in 39 chapters of the Holy Quran and repeated 58 times. The word beings is mentioned 37 times, and the word people 368 times. Moreover, the Quran dedicates an entire chapter on being human, and it is called, you guessed it, the human. Now what does this all mean? What's so special about being human? The Quran and God, its author, place a central value on being human, and that is the free will we have due to the intellect we were given. We have the ability to choose our actions to either help each other and ourselves, or to hinder our progress. How we choose to act and interact with one another may be seen as a huge responsibility, but it's also one of the biggest blessings we have, and it defines our humanity. This freedom of choice gives us our individuality and our ability to make decisions for ourselves. Unlike animals, we can succumb to our instincts or choose to go against our nature. Humans were given a special honor by being created with a resemblance to one of God's features. That is, we are all given the ability to choose freely. So essentially, we were all born free. And in Islam, that fundamental freedom can't be taken away or restricted in any way. If it is, then in the eyes of God, it is done unlawfully by no wrongdoer or an oppressor. So you see, it is through revelations that God has given us ways to keep intact our inherent dignity and sovereignty, which is a right for all. But what revelations is God talking about? As he mentions in the Quran in chapter 3, verse 34, He has sent down upon you, O Muhammad, the book and truth, confirming what was before it, and he revealed the Torah and the Gospel before as guidance for the people, and he revealed the Quran. And in the revelations, he also mentions that, as respect for us beings, God has given us the responsibility of being successors of the earth. This is the third favor he placed on humankind and no other creation. The Quran says in chapter 6, verse 165, It is he who has appointed you vicegerent on the earth. Indeed, a Muslim's character and identity is rooted in the concept of being a caretaker, not only to their family and friends, but also to everyone and everything that exists on earth. Imagine having to carry that responsibility with every decision you make. Luckily, a Muslim's attitude and way of thinking comes from a place of love and respect for God. They believe they are elevated in status by being faithful worshippers of their Lord. Worship in this context does not only include praying to God or fasting or performing other religious rituals. For Muslims, worship encompasses all aspects of life and all activities you are bound to engage in on a daily basis to live in this world. It's just about being good and doing good. Through the diligently recorded and preserved history of the actions of Prophet Muhammad, Muslims are able to understand how to live their best life on a daily basis. This includes living in an environmentally friendly way and leading a less wasteful life. It's about respect for animals and preserving the planet. It's about living in a healthy and helpful way and reducing the harm and injustice that already exists. This also extends to money dealings and business transactions, and it includes our interactions and relations with others. In all the affairs we just listed, Muslim believers are required to have a mindset that shows love, consideration, and support. Interactions are to happen in the spirit of fairness, tolerance, brotherhood, and community. With that said, this transcendent version of man in the Quran goes well beyond the physical aspects that make us human and slashes the view that we are merely an advanced type of primate. We are much more than that. We are women and men, brothers and sisters, and our origin is one, that of Adam and Eve. So, we're all born equal, right? As the Quran states in chapter 4, verse 1, O mankind, fear your Lord who created you from one soul and created from its mate and dispersed from both of them many men and women. The only thing that sets us apart from one another is our actions. Islam argues that since we are granted free will, we must bear the burden of our own actions. Unlike the angels who are not given free will or intellect, every individual has to own up to the decisions he or she makes. As the Quran narrates in chapter 2, verse 286, Allah does not charge a soul except with that within its capacity. It will have the consequence of what good it has gained, and it will bear the consequence of what evil it has earned. That is the heavy price to pay for our consciousness. And the successful among us, according to the Quran, they are the ones who enjoin good and forbid what is evil or harmful. Earlier, we touched upon fairness in trade and transactions as a part of worship for Muslims. With all the differences and diversity amongst us, the thing that truly makes us the same and really unites us to one cause is trade. There is an economic theory that states the notion of trade is that of comparative advantage, which means that each party is driven by the need of the other, and therefore an economic relationship is established on that basis. In simpler terms, the economy is run on a vast system of supply and demand. You can't have one without the other, and there's no room for vice there without risking a monetary loss. We overcome our differences to be active and viable in our economy, taking advantage of the comparative advantage as it were, yet we scrap this model when it comes to dealing with people on a personal level. A white Uber driver and a brown passenger will have no qualms with one another, but neighbors of different races may quarrel and bicker due to their cultural differences. Why is that? Why can't we unite on a personal level as we do on an economic level? Now let's talk about Islam's views on the creation of humanity. The first truth about the creation of humanity is that all of us belong to God. We must appreciate the beauty of diversity, as the reason for our differences is to get to know one another. God did not create us to mock one another, but so that our knowledge may grow in the getting to know each culture. This can bring different perspectives to the table, but only if we are willing to accept them at that table. Thanks to diversity, we are exposed to different ways of life and experiences, and can learn from and be inspired by them. As the Quran relates, O mankind, indeed we have created you from male and female and made you peoples and tribes that you may know one another. Indeed, the most noble of you in the sight of Allah is the most righteous of you. Indeed, Allah is all-knowing and acquainted. The Prophet expanded on this point, saying, O people, verily your Lord is one, and your father Adam is one. Verily, there is no superiority of an Arab over a non-Arab, or of a non-Arab over an Arab, or of a white man over a black man, or of a black man over a white man, except in terms of righteousness. Have I conveyed the message? They said, the messenger of God has conveyed the message. With Quranic verses and sayings of the Prophet as clear as these, there is no room for misinterpretation. Islam believes that everyone is born equal. Only our actions can set us apart. God created differences in each of us, and it is for us to get to know each other, not to impose power onto each other or to engage in conflict. The second truth about the creation of humanity is that we all have one origin and therefore should be socially harmonious. Let me explain. As we previously mentioned in the Quran, God tells us, Fear your Lord who created you from one soul and created from it its mate and dispersed from both of them many men and women. The Quran continues to ask us to be careful in our relationships with each other, as God is ever watching. So you see in Islam and in Christianity and Judaism as well, the lineage of humans is tied to one original set of parents, and from the original parents came out children of different races in the early generations, which means we are all one big family, even if we aren't the most functional one at the moment. We are created from one soul, one set of parents, and are all linked. A small example of this can be seen during the time of the Prophet, when there was a Persian companion of Muhammad named Salman al-Farsi. The Prophet said of him, Salman is one of the people of the house of the Prophet. It didn't matter that Salman wasn't of the same race as the Prophet, he was still considered family to Muhammad. With this truth about our one source of origin, racism is not compatible with being human. We are united by one mother and one father, no matter the color of our skin. This brings us to the third truth about the creation of humanity. The people who are most beloved to God are the ones who are most beneficial to people. That's right, folks, it isn't skin deep after all. The messenger of God was asked, which of the people are most beloved to God? He replied, those who are the most beneficial to people. So I'll leave you this thought. Islam doesn't pay much attention to how you look or where you come from. In truth, we come from the same origin, even if we look different. What matters is what we do and how we treat each other. As the prophet says, O people, verily God has taken away from you the arrogance of ignorance and its pride and forefather. People are of two types, righteous and pious, who are dear to God, and doomed evildoers who are insignificant before God. People are the descendants of Adam, and God created Adam from dust. So if you want to elevate your rank, all you have to do is be a good person. If you liked what you saw, please remember to like, comment, share, and let us know what you think in the comment section below. See you all next time.